District Law Olmsted. And the Toulon School is having an event that is featuring our very own Dr. C.N.E. Corbin, as well as two of her esteemed colleagues. Corbin, do you want to tell us just a little bit about that and how we can sign up?
I actually don't really have that information because I'm not handling the logistics. I'm just showing up and being a speaker, but I'm really looking forward to looking back and talking about Olmsted and the Olmsted company's impact on Portland and other cities moving forward. And for me, particularly, I'm very much a futurist. So I would really love to take that journey about what do future parks look like and what do we need as community members moving forward. So I'll leave it there, but it is February 24th and I believe from 6 to 8 p.m.
Great, thank you. With that, are there any other general announcements from the floor? If not, I hope folks had a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting. And I wanted to see if there were any comments, questions, corrections to those.
I have a minor one. In the report on land use and infrastructure, actually I've sent this along to Saren. It says regarding design on ends of the bridge, it should be the structural type at the east end of the bridge. I sent it to you in an email, Saren, so if we could make that correction.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Patty. So with Patty's correction noted that Saren has noted, are there any other comments or questions or discussion on the minutes?
I'd move adoption as corrected.
Terrific. Thank you, Patty. It has been moved that the minutes be approved as with the correction noted. Any second?
A second.
Thank you, Paul. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, with that, the motion carries. Thank you. With that, we'll go to the director's report. Director Long.
Thank you, Bonnie. Welcome, everyone. So I just wanted to cover a few items. I want to talk about the upcoming budget work sessions, where we are with COVID-19, upcoming council items, and then just talk a little bit about some upcoming events. So I know that Mike will probably, oh, Mike's not with us today. I didn't see him. In any case, someone will provide a report for the financial sustainability working group, but I wanted to provide a brief update on how City Council has requested the bureaus present their budget requests for this fiscal year. So as many of you already know, typically in March, City Council has a number of work sessions to discuss bureau requested budgets. Historically, these work sessions have been done on a bureau by bureau basis. This year, though, they've been organized by priority area. So Portland Parks and Recreation will be participating in 4 of these priority area sessions, including climate mitigation and resiliency, resilient infrastructure, re-envisioning community safety while acting with urgency, and supporting livable neighborhoods. So we'll share the schedule with this group. These are public meetings, so you're always welcome to tune in, and we'll share details on how you can do that online or on the YouTube channel. In terms of COVID-19, despite the state's release of, I guess, the face covering mandate at the end of March, Omicron did not spare the Bureau over the last couple of months and has really impacted staff and operations. Since the beginning of the year, we've had 175 case intakes of exposed or sick staff requiring investigation by our safety team, 64 confirmed positive cases, which resulted in 2,500 hours of lost time in January alone. And we had 2 official workplace outbreaks at recreational facilities. Recreation has experienced the majority of the programmatic impacts, including 17 multi-day cancellations of recreation programming due to COVID exposure or illness, 41 single-day cancellations due to staff illnesses or potential COVID exposure or illnesses, 4 full course cancellations due to high-risk factors in the program or in the instructor. Overall, the cancellations have impacted over 600 participants in January. We anticipate that with the decrease in hospitalizations that is being reported by OHA, that we're sort of over the hump of this surge, and we're hopeful that we can continue moving on with serving the public without too many interruptions, and that our staff will stay healthy. Some upcoming parks related council items that are coming up on the docket. Tomorrow, February 9th, we'll be requesting City Council to authorize an asset purchase agreement with East Portland Solar LLC for the purchase of a solar facility that has been at East Portland Community Center since 2008. That will cost $23,000. Just by way of background, the city entered an agreement to install and operate this solar facility at the community center. As I said, back in 2008, it generates electricity that is sold to parks at or below energy rates charged by its current utility providers. So we'll be spending the $23,000, and that's going to be used by funds from Recreation's utility budget, and overall it will result in a reduction in utility costs for the center. So that's a win-win there. On February 16th, we will be presenting for City Council's acceptance the year 6 bond oversight committee report on the $68 million Parks 2014 general obligation bond. No spoiler alerts, as Robin Laughlin will be presenting on this topic later this morning, so I will leave that there. On February 23rd, we'll be requesting City Council accept and appropriate a $750,000 grant from the state under the Federal American Rescue Plan Act. This is for the purpose of Red Electric Trail design and planning. As part of this fund, each Oregon state representative received funds to allocate for projects and improvements in their district. Senator Ginny Burdick chose to allocate $750,000 to fund further fund the design and development of unbuilt sections of the Red Electric Regional Trail that will ultimately connect Beaverton to the Willamette River Greenway Trail. Just for the board's education, this development, this portion of the development of the Red Electric Trail has been identified as a desired facility in the city's comprehensive plan, the Bureau's regional trail strategy, Metro's regional trail system, and there is a strong community-based organization who supports this work. I think there's a little discussion about Southwest Trails, Urban Trails, and that's the group that has been advocating for this work. And finally, on March 9th, we will be presenting a report on the status of the tree canopy here in Portland, and we will work with council to craft an associated resolution that demonstrates the city's commitment to growing and managing the urban forest. My understanding is that that will be presented also at the Urban Forestry Commission on February 17th. And if this group or the Land Use and Infrastructure group would also like a presentation, we can make an arrangement for that to happen. And I can talk with Bonnie and Casey to see how that would best be received. We mentioned that yesterday was the ribbon cutting for the newly relocated and restored Mill Ends Park. It was a lot of fun, a bright light in an otherwise sort of dreary day. I would have invited all of you, but seeing as though it's this world's smallest park, we had some capacity limitations. I mean, there were like 10 of us on the median, and we got lots of honks. So, but please look out for the media coverage on it. It was a very sweet event, and the son and daughter and daughter-in-law of Dick Fagan, the founder of the park were there, and they brought the original park sign. So it was very sweet. Upcoming events are listed at the end of the meeting agenda, and it also includes links so that if you want to RSVP, it's very easy to find that information. There are 2 nature patch ribbon cutting events, February 12th at Overlook, February 19th at A Park, formerly known as Custer Park, and there's a winter tree identification course on February 26th. So I'm going to pause and take a breath and see if anyone has any questions. Great.
It looks like Paul's hand is up.
Thank you. One thing I noticed in the director's report, Commissioner Long, was reference to the Forest Park entry being completed by the end of March. And if I'm recalling correctly, the original agreement with DEQ was by the end of the year. So I'm just curious, was that new date negotiated with DEQ? So there's no change in the fine status for the PPNR?
Do you want me to answer that, Adina? Yeah, the answer is yes. We did negotiate that and we're all set.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Lauren. Adrian has a question, it looks like.
Thanks. That was a great update. I wanted to put in a plug for this group hearing about the urban canopy, tree canopy. You know, in addition to us hearing it at the urban forestry meeting, you know, the upshot is that despite really many great efforts, we're losing our canopy. There's a net loss. And I think, you know, the skills in this group will be, and, you know, what parks can contribute to the solution, I think is real important.
Yeah, we can, the next board meeting is the day before the council presentation. So if Jen Cairo and her staff are available to present on that day, and there's no competing other agenda items, I think we can certainly make that happen. I usually, Sarah and I meet with Bonnie and Casey generally a week after our board meeting. So next week to talk about the next meeting. So if we can schedule it, we'll do that. And if we can't schedule it, maybe we'll do it at like land use and infrastructure, and then open the invitation for other people to join. So we'll get the information in front of the board one way or the other.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Director Long? Anything else for your report, Director?
Nope, I'm all set. Thank you, Bonnie.
Okay, terrific. One thing I failed to note is there's just a small error on the agenda. I just want to call your attention. We don't actually need 20 minutes to talk about March's meeting agenda. There was supposed to be any time we have between the bond report that Robin provides and any ideas that folks have for the March meeting. We were going to talk about the new membership recruitment process. Unfortunately, Aaron was not feeling well today, so Casey and I will muddle through. So just wanted to note that because I forgot to do it at the outset of the meeting. Okay, with that, we'll move into the working group reports. As I mentioned, Aaron was not feeling well this morning. She texted me and Casey, so Casey is going to give the community engagement working group report.
Thank you, and I will muddle through as best I can with Aaron's absence. For the community engagement working group, the primary focus has been on the board public comment procedure. Overall, the group is putting what is hoped to be a complete package together to bring to the board for its approval. The language to be distributed to the public on inviting comments and how comments are taken by board has been approved, as has the much more detailed process for how the board will receive and address public comments. The group is presently working on dates and times of board meetings, the community outreach strategy, and how to measure progress in increasing community engagement by the board. After those items are completed, there should be a complete package to bring to the board for approval, maybe in March. The group is also monitoring the response by Commissioner Rubio's office on a proposed procedure to address the park block statutes issues. The next meeting is February 17th. That's all I've got. Is there any questions or comments from other members?
Yeah, do any of the other members of the working group have anything they want to add? Nope. Ally, Sabrina, Corbin? Okay. Thank you, Casey, for filling in for Aaron. Unfortunately, I'm going to ask you to do it again because Mike is traveling and is unable to provide the report of the financial sustainability work group. So Casey, I think you're pitch hitting for that as well, but I know Claudio will support you, as will the rest of us, as
Yes,
best
and
we can.
I'll muddle through on this one as well. I apologize for my voice for the next couple of minutes, but we'll probably catch up on our schedule now. So there was no meeting held this month and no written report was provided. The meeting schedule has been shifted to the fourth Thursday of the month at 2 p.m. So the next meeting is on February 22nd. Just a quick oral report on this year's performance to date as to the existing budget, status of the 22-23 budget, and request under the American Rescue Plan Act. For the existing budget, and remember, we are only partway through the financial fiscal year that ends at the end of June. After the summer, revenues from recreation were tracking ahead of budget, but after Delta Omicron impacted fall and winter, revenues fell about $350,000 behind. However, it was anticipated that expenses will be lower than the amount of revenue loss because of lower casual staffing requirements, partially due to COVID-related restrictions. So overall, Parks is performing slightly better than budget right now. The status of the 22-23 budget, and some of this was covered in Director Long's report. The proposed budget has some $17.4 million in increased funding, which includes 7 additional positions. The majority of the increase, about $9.2 million, is from levy funds, and the majority of that, about $6.8 million, is for reducing cost as a barrier to program. $475,000 in levy funds are also being allocated to support community partnership program to expand parks capacity to reach underserved communities and center equity. The budget also requests a general fund capital set aside of approximately $7.5 million to eliminate ADA barriers at Pier Park and meet climate action plan goals through replacement of lighting and mechanical systems. In January, the Budget Advisory Committee met, reviewed the increases, and provided a letter in support of the budget. On January 26, Parks submitted the budget to the City Budget Office. And as explained by Director Long, the way this goes that in March, City Council holds a series of work sessions to discuss Bureau budgets. In late April or early May, the mayor releases the proposed budget, and that eventually leads to an adopted budget in June, ready for a July start of the fiscal year. And then the fall bump procedure starts, so it continues. And lastly, there's been a request from the American Rescue Plan Act funds. The Parks has requested nearly $15 million in American Rescue Act funds to enhance the scope of Mount Scott Community Center project, to increase planting of trees in underserved neighborhoods, to increase staffing for the Ranger program, and to continue converting Bureau's inventory of top-loading garbage cans to side-loading ones, thus enhancing staff health and safety. Any questions or comments from any other member, particularly Claudio or Todd? Any additions that I should put in?
I think you got it. One thing I'll just note is I think you said that the next meeting was the 22nd. It's the 24th, but other than that, 100%.
Thank you, Casey. Any questions for Casey or any additions by any of the other members of that working group? If not, we'll move on to the report of the Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group. Patty.
Thank you, Bonnie. I'd happily hand this over to Casey since he does such a good job. We met a week ago and covered 3 topics, having a presentation on each. The first was floodplain resilience plan. This is a plan that's really looking at the Willamette through through Portland primarily. It takes into account the FEMA's 100-year flood plans and also uses data from the 1996 inundation photographs. It's focused on protection of habitat for salmon, steelhead, and other species. There are recommendations draw on FEMA's implementation materials. Flood management proposals include updating to zoning and building codes to accommodate this. The riparian buffer zones are defined, and there's a special focus on the South Waterfront area, which has changed quite a bit in the last decade or so. A preliminary draft report will be submitted to a Planning and Sustainability Commission in the spring, and we expect a little more detail then. The second topic was the Albino Vision Trust. We had a presentation by Kay and Talton Davis, and she talked about what had changed in the clearance, of course, in 1958. This has been very much a public engagement exercise so far. There have been 52 different events to date. The vision for the area includes hubs and public places, commercial and housing opportunities, and it examines the consequences of different types and densities of development. It's, I think, very useful in looking at what can be accomplished and what the consequences of these are. It's still in its early days, but the idea is that there would be a complete transformation achieved by 2050. So it's very much a long-term plan. The third item was Levy Ready Columbia. There are 5 drainage districts along the Columbia River, which are maintained to prevent flooding of the former Willamette Delta, which of course includes the airport as well as a lot of other valuable properties. The Peninsula Drainage District is the most westerly of these, it's next to I-5. And there, the Corps of Engineers has requested reinforcement of the levee, which is also the railroad embankment. Now, since this would entail suspension of rail service during construction, the railroad has refused to cooperate. So the alternative is a setback levee or a flood wall built inside the embankment. But this would have, well, apart from being very expensive, it would also compromise some of the activities of PIR and the golf course. So discussion goes on. So far, the process has taken about 10 years and a satisfactory solution is yet to be agreed. So those are the main topics we covered. We've got a long list of other watch items, but there was no further action taken on any of those. Anything to add, other members of the working group? Seeing nodding heads.
Yeah, that's good, Patty.
Okay, thank you. That's it then. Back to you, Bonnie.
Thank you, Patty. No questions for Patty or any additions by any other members of the working group? Okay. If not, we're going back to Casey. It's the Casey show to tell us what's going on with the Board Affairs Working Group.
Okay, just tell me when you have too much of me here. First thing is that we had to change our meetings to the 4th Tuesday of the month at 4 o'clock, and everyone, of course, is welcome. The February meeting was devoted to the board's revised mission. A new mission is required as the board is beyond its original mission. And a reminder, a new mission will require City Council approval and revisions to the ordinance that created the board. Submission of the board's revised mission will take place about the time the park has approved its new mission under Healthy Parks and Healthy Portland. Present conversations about the board mission has been centering around the board increasing its advocacy when legally allowed in education at all times, both particularly for improving parks financial situation. Both particularly for improving the park's financial situation. Mission is also being centered around the board creating a forum to engage with a wide array of communities as partners with parks. There are also ongoing discussions on the use of parks of board members for those members' expertise. If you would like to provide your thoughts or insights on this issue, please contact me. All comments and ideas are welcome. And again, we've started to submit written reports, and if you have any questions or comments or suggestions on those written reports being provided by the working groups, please contact me with your other suggestions. Next meeting for that working group is February 22nd. And as before, if anybody has on the group has any additions, please speak up. And if anybody has any questions, please ask.
Thank you, Casey. Any questions or comments for Casey or any additions by any other members of the Board Affairs Working Group? No. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the foundation report. Normally we hear from Randy. I know Randy has invited Jessica Green, the foundation's operations manager, to give an update on the Friends and Allies work. Randy, I wasn't sure if you wanted to give a quick intro to Jessica.
Sure. Jessica is, in a sense, I don't know, the heart, the spine, half of the brain of the foundation. Yeah, she predated me with the organization, and since in the last 3 years, we've really evolved her position from solely being operations to really being our program director, and we created the Friends and Allies initiative out of kind of pieces of things that the foundation was doing, small grants and technical assistance, and then we made it into a much larger initiative. And you all heard me last time sort of give the broad overview of the foundation's activities. I thought it would be fun, especially with some opportunities coming up for your participation, to hear directly from Jessica, who's really creating this initiative. So I'll turn it over to her.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. I'm going to, am I allowed to screen share? I'm just going to screen share a little presentation. So as Randy said, I just want to talk to you a little bit more about our Friends and Allies initiative. As a citywide parks nonprofit, we really see one of our major roles as like a connector and convener and a resource for all of the hundreds of parks friends groups and like parks adjacent groups out there. And so over the last year, we've looked strategically at what all these little pieces that we're doing to support those groups and putting them into one initiative. So what that looks like, here, I'll start here. I've put it, let's see. Okay, so you should be able to see that. What that looks like, let's see if it will actually advance for me. There we go. Is a series of programs. So starting out, we actually have one starting very soon. We have our Parks Champion Award that celebrates volunteerism within the Portland Parks world. And the great part about that is 2 champions get to direct $1,500 grants to an organization of their choice. And then within that, then we have a small grants opening up twice a year. The first one starts March 1st, and those are $2,000 small grants. And then we have a new award, the Joey Pope Leadership Award, which will be a $10,000 award for an emerging leader in the parks world. Within that space in March, we also have a one-off equity workshop. Those of you who registered for our fall summit last year has received an email about it, but it's a great opportunity for the Parks Friends groups to be able to look inward and identify places that there's opportunity to create more equity within their organization and then to further their partnerships. And then we get to our spring summit and fall summit, and then another cycle of small grants. Today, I want to talk to you mostly about the summits, but I think it's really important to see all of these initiatives together just to see the timeline of what's happening. And as the Parks Board, you're involved in the Parks community, and it would be great. a lot of these are, ways to get other individuals involved and to get funding for other places. So the more you spread the word about each of these programs, the more opportunities you're creating within our parks communities. So noting that as just a quick kind of highlight of goals and why we're, what we're focusing on as we go into each of these programs and how we're thinking about them. Within each of these programs, there's a real priority to make sure that everything that we're doing is centering historically marginalized groups. That's from the topics that we choose, the people who we are asking, are supporting the creation of the programs, and how we're actually doing our outreach.
Jessica? Jessica?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you,
Yes.
and I appreciate you taking the time to tell us this. I think we're still on your cover page. Are other people seeing something other than your PowerPoint cover page?
No,
Are you
it's
not-
still the cover page.
Yeah, so we're still on your
Interesting.
cover page.
And
Well,
it's
let's
not-
go over it.
It's not in slideshow view.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. That's interesting. I'll try again. Let's see.
I knew you'd put the slides together and I wanted to be able to take advantage of them if we could do that.
Yeah,
But
there
if,
you are.
but if
Okay,
not, it's
so-
totally fine too. Oh, there we go. That's
Are you
perfect.
able to see that?
Yep, and it's
But
perfect.
then are
It's,
you able to see?
it's the slide view now. That's correct. Great. Keep going. Sorry to
can see-
interrupt you.
Well, here's the beautiful timeline. So anyway, these are back to our goals, really to provide the hands-on technical support. So, we have Green Dreams, we have a lecture series, but when we think about our summits, the goal behind those is really to have like a work setting to get down and do some work. We're also looking just to foster collaboration with our committees, and then within programming itself, always looking to increase the capacity of grassroots organizations and to inspire new partnerships, but also ways to think about strengthening and maintaining current ones. Can we still see new slides?
Yep, you're doing it.
Great. So what are these summits? PP&R, in the past has done Friends Summits, I think now maybe like 7 years ago. There was a gap in them, and then in conversations with PP&R and the foundation and the community at large, there was a strong desire to pick them back up again. So the foundation 2 years ago relaunched the summit programming, and the summit programming, the way we structured it is twice a year. And in the spring, it's more just one day celebratory, an opportunity for individuals to network with each other. A lot of them are doing similar things or wanting to get to the next level that somebody else is at. So it's a great learning opportunity from peer to peer. We also are adding a day of service with a field workshop. So we're working very closely with PP&R Land Stewardship team and getting community feedback on topics that would be of interest there. And then the fall summit is the larger piece, and that fall summit is a multi-day summit, and it involves technical workshops, so ranging from like 15 to 30 people, and there usually is a keynote and a day of service involved. Some of the topics that we've done in the past include even like just fundraising, communications, how to start a friends group, kind of getting through to the next level. We've done fiscal sponsorships and insurance, and then we've had keynotes on like trauma-informed care, as well as the intersection between parks and houselessness. So those are kind of the summits in a nutshell, and all of these have that underlying theme of how to build connections. And just, this is like a quick long list, but in terms of what programming might look like in the future, we've really find it important to get community feedback in terms of what they're interested in. And these are just, this is sort of a long list of some of the topics that have kind of thematically shown up over time. And those of you who can't see, I can send it later, just so I know I have limited time, but I think that one of the most important things that has come out of this is that these summits and grant programs, they all are really community led. And we've put together community steering committees for both like the review committee and then the summit steering committee. Here's a list of who's on the current summit steering committee. And they're really designed by these committees as well as then external community feedback. And it's been a great way to see these individuals start to partner also with each other on things. And the Friends and Allies Steering Committee is involved basically in helping plan the spring and fall summits, as well as selecting our parks champions for the year. And one of the exciting things I think about thinking about parks champions and our small grants is a lot of it is a pipeline into larger and more funding. So you'll see people come through and be nominated for parks champion, but then maybe get a small grant later. And then as we think about the Joey Pope Leadership Award and how it all intersects, or if there's opportunity for them to then participate and facilitate a workshop down the road. So it all is very much connected. And that, then I just also have a list too of our small grant steering committee and who is on that. And in terms of how we are building out those committees, it's we have an open call application process as well as direct outreach. So there's an opportunity both, and we are providing stipends for everybody who's participating. And then those who opt out of the stipend, the foundation offers those individuals to decide, direct a grant of their choice in that amount to an organization that they choose. And that's sort of a quick overview. Randy, if there's anything else you want to add, I'll stop sharing.
No, great overview. And happy to, both of us can answer questions.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm glad we got your slides up because I know it's helpful to actually be able to see what you've prepared for us. Any questions for Jessica or Randy on their Friends and Allies work? I'm actually really excited. And I think, we want to talk about how we can build the alliances with the Friends and Allies as we think about, like I mentioned, we're going to be talking a little bit about starting our new board member recruitment process, which Erin has agreed to chair again. So, we'd love to hear if there are, folks that you guys have been working with who you think would be good Parks Board members. So thank you.
For having me.
Okay, anything else on that topic? If not, we will move on to the report of the Bond Oversight Committee. Robin.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, Robin.
Good morning. Thanks for having me today. Am I available to do screen share as well?
You should be. If you don't see a screen share on the bottom of your screen, let me know and I can add you as a co-host.
And while I'm sorting that out, can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Awesome. Looking for that screen share button. Sorry, I've got you on a small screen over here. There we go. All right, can you see the cover slide?
We can.
Excellent, thank you. Well, again, thanks for having me today. I'm Robin Laughlin. I have she, her pronouns, and I'm the Capital Renovation Program Manager for Portland Parks. And I'm here today to present our Year 6 annual report for the 2014 Parks Replacement Bond. So the 2014 Parks Replacement Bond provides up to $68 million in funds to make urgent repairs in parks, community centers, and park facilities throughout the city. Portland Parks and Recreation's bond program has completed its 6th year, a really busy year that's summarized in the Year 6 report that I'll be presenting today. And there's a lot of information to share in that report, so I'll be focusing today on 3 key points of the report: performance, accountability, and opportunity. I'll also share the program's achievements in making park and facility renovations and improving accessibility across the city. As in years past, the bond program has remained consistent with the language of the measure, with project work focused on the 7 established themes of playground replacement and repair, trails and bridges, pools, protecting workers, Pioneer Courthouse Square, accessibility, restrooms, and other urgent repairs. The $68 million investment is being made at parks across the city, and the map on your screen shows these investments with the black symbols representing completed projects and the orange symbols indicating projects underway. So we report on the bond program's progress based on the fiscal year, and at the close of the 2020-21 fiscal year, all 52 projects were complete or underway, with 49 projects completed and 3 underway, either in construction or in contracting. Also at the close of that reporting year, $53.6 million had been spent, and we're on track to meet the promises made to voters in 2014. In the 2021 fiscal year, the bond team completed 3 projects: the Crescent Park playground renovations, the Matt Dishman Community Center roof repairs, and ADA renovations at East Portland Community Center. Of the 3 projects that are currently underway, the Gabriel Park playground renovation project is tracking on schedule. And then projects at Delta Park Urban Forestry and Mount Tabor Yard were delayed at the land use and development permit phases, but they're now on track for completion. It looks like it's slightly back. Let's close that window. I can see ya. Okay, so moving on to our budget, the bond program is on track to deliver all the promised projects within the available funding. And overall, the program is tracking an excellent on-budget completion with a few project overages, such as the Mount Tabor Yard and the Urban Forestry Yard, excuse me, staff facilities. These overages are being addressed in keeping with financial policies of the program. If there are any remainder funds after completing the promised projects, we'll be working with the Parks Commissioner, Director Long, and the Bond Oversight Committee to ensure that those funds are appropriately allocated and in keeping with the program's fiscal policies and the goals of the program. So from the beginning, we had a long list of potential projects that were vetted with the public. However, we were only funded for a fraction of those, and that list is what we'll be using to draw from to select final projects if we have any remainder funds available. And in addition to tracking the projects, we also monitor our administrative expenses. And the good news here is that our cumulative spending on administrative expenses continues to remain low, with 4.5% of the overall spending for the life of the bond, well below our target of 10%. A lot of text on this slide, so feel free to read. So I just want to let you know that not only is the Bureau working hard to improve the parks infrastructure, the bond funding is also being invested in the greater Portland community to ensure that disadvantaged, minority-owned, women-owned, emerging small businesses, and service-disabled veteran business enterprises, collectively known as DMW, ESB, SD, VBE firms, that these firms have opportunities to design, bid on, and construct the bond projects. These firms are also referred to as COBID certified firms after the State Certification Office for Business Inclusion and Diversity. Okay, so since July 2015, bond projects have awarded 39% of the combined value of professional design services and construction work to state certified firms, exceeding the city's goals of 20% utilization. A further breakdown of the bond project spending for the combined value of professional design services and construction work shows that 17.7% of the value was awarded to minority-owned businesses, 16.1% to women-owned businesses, and 5.5% to emerging small businesses. Taken separately, the numbers show 31% of the value of all professional design service work going to these firms and 41% of the value of construction contracts awarded to these firms. You can see further breakdowns on the screen for each of these categories. And I want to say that looking at the certified firm data disaggregated, we do still see that we have work to do, and we want to continue to improve our minority contractor participation rates. And although the work is coming to a close for the bond, we do plan to continue to actively participate with the National Association of Minority Contractors, Latino Built, the Philippine American Chamber of Commerce of Oregon, the Oregon Association of Minority Entrepreneurs, and other local professional and trade associations to continue to foster relationships and share upcoming contracting opportunities in our capital work moving forward, not just for our capital divisions. So last bit I want to share about this opportunity slide is that we have pulled the data from the state website in order to identify the composition of minority participation. So as noted, 17.7% of the contract values for professional services and construction went to these firms. And of that grouping, 70.6% of that value went to Black-owned firms, 14.4% to Hispanic-owned firms, and 4.6% to Asian Indian firms. And just under 1% went to Native American firms, and 9.5% went to firms that didn't have the data for what their minority status was. So this is a big slide. I want to take a quick pause here and see if there's any questions about this one just yet. Okay, I'll move on. Thank you. So I want to move on to the topic of accountability. Audits were required as part of the bond measure to ensure fiscal accountability. And in order to meet this obligation, Harvey M. Rose Associates was hired to provide a performance audit at the midpoint of the delivery of the bond program. This work was completed in January of 2019, and another audit will be performed at the conclusion of the bond program work. The findings of the audit in 2019 confirmed that the funds are being spent in a manner that adheres to the language of the measure. The program is operating in a fiscally responsible manner, and the existing documentation systems are transparent, in place, and functioning well. The audit included recommendations to further enhance the program's efficiency, and the program has made progress on implementing those recommendations with a recent focus on process improvements related to contingency tracking and bond issuances. With the initial bond selection work, an extensive public outreach process helped garner bond support, thanks in particular to Commissioners Fish and Fritz. And building on those efforts, the bond team has engaged in public outreach tailored to each of the bond programs as we've worked through the outreach over the last 6 years. Our work around community engagement continues to reflect our increasingly diverse communities' needs and desires, including specific engagement with Latinx, Russian-speaking, Somali, and Vietnamese communities. Our project-specific outreach has also been targeted to low-income and disability communities. So during the 6 years of the work, the community engagement efforts focused on in-person communications and electronic notification. But during the last year, due to COVID-19 restrictions, we did focus solely on electronic notifications of project completion and construction milestones. And we did not hold any in-person events. And another point about transparency is the program has regular meetings with an oversight committee to ensure that the work of the Bureau is accountable and true to the promises we made in 2014. So the Bond Oversight Committee membership transitioned in the last year, with many committee members moving off the committee as their terms ended. And the current committee is currently composed of 4 members, including David Staszak as our chair. So nice to see you here again too, David. So in the past, the committee recommended that Portland Parks and Recreation establish program contingency to use bond interest earnings to support projects in protected workers categories. And we do continue to anticipate working with and updating the committee as we finish up these final projects. So with the Parks Bureau's annual report now complete, the Oversight Committee worked on their annual report, and that one is complete as well. And it discusses the performance, their view of our performance based on this report that we're presenting today. And the Oversight Committee's report is complete, like I said, and it will be presented to Council on February 16th. And we have a time certain of 10:15. So if anybody here wants to give that a watch, please do. It should be a nice presentation. David's going to be making that one. So just want to give you a few of the project highlights from last year. We're bringing a lot of quality and revived services to our community that have been really important during COVID. I'd like to share a few of the projects we completed now. The Crescent Park Playground you see on your screen was completed in the fall of 2020. And this playground renovation project features a modern, more accessible play environment and includes a new accessible pathways and an irrigation system improvements. The Parks Replacement Bond also included accessibility as a focus area with projects at East Portland Community Center, Washington Park, Mount Tabor Park, and Mount Loma Arts Center. And bond projects in other theme areas also removed existing barriers to access, with over 400 barriers removed in total so far. This work included targeted repairs to park playgrounds, pathways, pools, and more. And on your screen is an image of completing some entry work at East Portland Community Center. So our restrooms and other category has made renovations to 22 facilities throughout the city. This important work included completing the much needed repairs to the roof at the Matt Dishman Community Center last year. And in the coming year, what we have left, the next 6 months, the remaining 3 bond projects are slated to be completed or finish or continue to move along through construction. The renovations are expected to be completed at the Gabriel Park Playground and the Urban Forestry Maintenance Facility this spring. And construction at Mount Tabor Yard is underway in full swing. So just to kind of close up, the COVID-19 pandemic really changed the way Portlanders interact, as you know, with our parks and community centers. And we're really grateful that we've been able to make all this infrastructure improvements across the city so folks can access the facilities that we have. And as these final bond projects move towards completion, we'll continue to work closely with our local design and construction professionals to deliver the promises we've made and finish up these final 3 projects. And we're really looking forward to meeting again someday in the future. I'm concerned about COVID. So thanks so much for your time. On your screen is some of my contact information. And then just wanted to note, if you want to get a copy of the Parks Replacement Bonds annual reports, they're there at www.parksreplacementbond.org. All of our past Oversight Committee notes are there as well.
Thank you, Robin. I see Nova has her hand up. Are you willing? Do you have some? Can you entertain some questions?
Absolutely. I've got plenty of time.
Okay, terrific.
can I help?
Nova, go ahead.
Thanks, Bonnie. Robin, my name's Nova. I'm a more recent board member. I joined in the summer. So there's a couple things I'm just not as clear about. One is I would love to understand what a yard is. So I'm just not familiar with that language. But the other one is more technical. I was really, I'm happy to see the numbers around the administrative costs, but at the same time, coming from being an executive director of a nonprofit, and I always get a little bit worried when overhead and administrative costs are considered to be a bad thing, because they're needed. They're needed. Those costs are needed. So I'm just curious what is driving those costs to be lower than expected. I obviously think that's a great outcome, and voters love to hear that. But is there anything in the I guess delivery of the bond where we should just be aware of why those administrative costs would be trending a bit lower than expected?
I'm going to go with the easy question first.
Okay.
A yard. Thanks, Nova. Appreciate that. A yard is a maintenance yard. So it's a maintenance facility where all the folks that take care of our parks, we have the Mount Tabor Yard is the folks that take care of parks all across the city. So there you're going to find people that are welders and electricians and plumbers that are going to be fixing our community centers. The folks that have the mowers that mow the lawns and everything, those get stored there as well. And a lot of other services happen at the yard. Same thing for urban forestry. They take care of the trees across the city. So the folks store their vehicles and their tools and all the equipment that they need for their jobs at the yard in these new buildings. And then they respond to the tree emergencies across the city. Does that help explain what we mean by
super helpful? Yes, thank you.
Awesome.
That's obviously very essential, but I think I went somewhere else with it, so that's super helpful. Thanks.
Oh, fantastic! Thanks. Sorry, it's the soup we swim in, so I'm totally not aware that was a lingo thing. So why was administrative costs so low? That's a really complicated question that honestly I don't have. I can give you hunches on that, but I wouldn't have like a concrete answer. I think that could be something that we can kind of look into and toss through. Part of what it is is just being super efficient about how we do the work. Some of the program management I've done in the past, I was working in addition to managing the program. By working, I mean like I'm working on a project, so part of my time is billable, if you were. And part of it is a little bit structured in how we keep track of some of our spending. It feels like this is a very much non-answer, so I do want to get back to you. I think Lauren McGuire is here. She might have a little bit more input about some of the backgrounds on the whys.
Thank you. And I think that makes sense what you said. And sorry, I think that there's a extra noise in the background. I apologize. I don't know where it's coming from. But I think what I was, I think I always want to just bring forward the idea that it's important for government and city programs to have administrative support. And I think it can be a slippery slope with voters to have them expect that there is not administrative cost or overhead costs. And I think we have to, it's a necessary part of doing a bond, because people get nervous about administrative costs. But I just want to make sure that, you know, one, I just really value professional work. And I think that we should expect the same professional work from our city government as we expect from, as we allow and are more comfortable with from our corporate private sector businesses.
You know, it was reminding me as you mentioned that part of our overhead costs, they get calculated every year, do get folded into some of the project expenses. So we're still paying for that. We're still paying for support from procurement, support from other, you know, CAO and things like that.
Great. So kind of like the non-direct project costs that are administrative. I could see that. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Nova, one of the other things that we did when we started the bond was we established several different mechanisms to facilitate administrative work. For example, contracting, we set up many on-call contracts as opposed to going through the entire procurement process for every project that we and we did that kind of work to help facilitate the administrative cost as well.
Thank
Thanks,
you. That's
Lauren.
helpful. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Nova, for your very insightful question. Any other questions for Robin as she gets ready to present to the City Council? Okay, if not, we're going to move into the discussion about the membership, new membership committee and the nominating committee that, thank you, Robin, that we mentioned was inadvertently left off of the agenda. Casey, I think Stephen unfortunately had to sign off because we wanted to give an overview of what typically happens with the nominating committee and the schedule by which that happens. Were you going to do that, Casey, or you want me to kind of walk through that? It was actually supposed to be Aaron, but again, Aaron isn't here today.
I figured by now people are tired of hearing from me, so I thought it was going to be you. But I can do it if needed.
Let me go ahead and describe the schedule. And like I said, unfortunately, Stephen's not here, but we will loop him in at another time because we did have really good involvement last year from Cynthia as the commissioner's liaison, as we were doing all of the applicant reviews and applicant interviews for the new board members. So I'm just looking at last year's schedule. This year we have one board member who is rolling off after a long and distinguished service. Thank you very much, Patty Tillett. We will miss you terribly. So we do need to replace, well, we can't replace Patty, but we need to fill his position. And so we definitely need to do that. Unfortunately, we did have Juan who, because of the clinical work as a medical professional, the demands of his clinical work became much heavier with the context, the pandemic context. So he stepped off the board. So we need to replace for his position as well. So typically what happens is we try to open the applications for a good month, 6-week period. But before that happens, We convene a nominating committee. Again, Aaron has agreed to chair that committee. We meet to discuss the questions that we would like to have put into the application. And then we do that with the director's office, so Director Long, Commissioner's office, so Stephen, and then members of the nominating committee. So please know that we want new board members, old board members. We want a lot of cross disciplinary involvement. So if you're interested in doing this, I really encourage you to. But even if you don't have time or don't want to particularly participate in the nominating committee this time, we do utilize everybody's networks. So think about the type of people or the type of organizations you are active in that might be ripe for this kind of opportunity. You know, share it with your LinkedIn, share it with your, you know, Bridge Club, share it with your, you know, whatever, what have you. So we have the applications open for a good 5-6 week period at least. And then we get together and we review the applications. And last year, somebody on the committee reminded me, we got an astounding number, something like 40 or maybe more to fill the 4 positions. Maybe it was more than that even. Might have been 50. I can't remember. It was a lot. We went through a lot of applications. And we didn't want to waste people's time. So we didn't want to interview, even though we could have interviewed, and we could have filled this board 2 or 3 times over, I think, with the number and quality of applicants was astounding, which is terrific. It's a wonderful place to be. We're hoping some of those people are going to also, you know, come back. You know, we have at least one board member who is a current member of the board, who's a very valuable contributing member of this board, who unfortunately wasn't accepted this first go around, and we're delighted he stayed with it and submitted again. So, so with that, the nominating committee then reviews the applications and does go through an interview process. Our goal is to get our slate of candidates, to present that slate of candidates before this body in the May meeting. And then we file for the June City Council agenda, because as you know, each of these members is actually appointed, all of us are appointed by City Council. So City Council has the ultimate say. The nominating committee recommends to the board and the board recommends to the City Council, but the City Council is who actually nominates and approves those board members. So like I said, a couple things to think about. Think about if it's something you have bandwidth to participate in and add value to. We would love to have you. Erin is going to chair that group, and we're delighted. She brings a lot of great insights into that. We will be sending out the board skills and interest matrix. I don't know if you remember, you probably, when you were new to the board, you may have looked at that and sort of checked a few boxes and populated that previously. You know, obviously we're not fungible in that way, where we think about people as exclusively the skill sets that they bring, but it does help the nominating committee to think about what skills might be rolling off that we need to make sure we have on, where we might be a little bit lighter in terms of skill set for the board, that we want to be a little bit more active in our recruiting in, and where we might want to target. So, so those things will all be happening. And then the other thing we wanted to talk about, Casey, if there's anything you want to add there, please do. But I know the thing that we also wanted to talk about specifically was with respect to the ex-officio members. So unfortunately, Lorena, who has been a longtime ex-officio member from the Urban Forestry Commission, has also resigned. She has taken on some teaching duties at Portland Community College, which unfortunately was conflicting a lot with this meeting time. And frankly, she just didn't have the time anymore for it. So she resigned from both Urban Forestry Commission and this Parks Board. So that leaves us with only one ex-officio member remaining on the board, which is Randy. And who is incredibly valuable ex officio member, but our bylaws state we can have up to 4. And we see this as an opportunity to really utilize the ex officios in a way that allows us to do better work, more meaningful work, and really help expand our role in being a partner to the Parks Bureau and the Parks Commissioner's Office. So Casey, with that, do you want to talk a little bit about the ex officios and how we might go about that process?
Just a little bit more to add on it. Unlike full members, ex officio members are actually just selected by the board and don't have to go to council for approval. And the only requirement is that they are people in the judgment of the board will assist the board in carrying out its duties. So it's a very broad spectrum of who we can ask. We can be extremely creative here. And as Bonnie was pointing out before, we have slots for at least 3 additional people. And I guess at this stage, I would hope and request and recommend that all of you, including park staff, who have any idea in terms of people or organizations who might benefit the board and their representation on the board as ex officio members, be sent, their ideas be sent to either me or Aaron. And again, I would think about people and organizations that would be helpful, beyond, even beyond organizations that you typically think about parks. Director Long had a great idea in terms of trying to figure out how we can get someone who's young, youth participants, either within parks or outside of parks. But you can also think about, senior citizens, employees, diversity groups that simply support diversity, all those. And so at this stage, just we can do it in any way in terms of accepting and appointing in a much faster or longer way than we're doing it with regular members. And at this stage, I would simply request that if you have any ideas, to send them to me and Aaron, and we can pick up with a much more specific slate to talk about this later. Don't come rushing to me now, but anytime in the future.
Do we have any thoughts? Since we do have a little bit of time, I thought if we had, we could potentially open it up to ideas of places we could recruit. Not so much because I think we necessarily need to, because again, we got a lot of applications, but I think in terms of ways that we could meaningfully target folks that we, whose voices maybe haven't been heard. In the chat, Tim mentioned, somebody with potentially lived experience with houselessness. I think that is critically important. And there has been some tension with respect to houseless issues in several of our parks. I think that would be really valuable. I might go around and see if folks have ideas from their own neighborhoods or their own networks. Alana, you've been quiet, but you always have something going on in there. I can see those gears going.
I don't have any names immediately, but I do love the idea of somebody either with lived experience or who works with houseless populations. I think this is also an opportunity to think about where we're trying to build out infrastructure in parks. I know we have, through Sabrina's representation and others, a lot of folks on the board who are thinking about East Portland, but are there other organizations that we'd like to have involved that we might partner with on some of our outreach in communities where we're building out parks? And should we bring in an ex officio member from one of those organizations? Those are the 2 thoughts that came to mind. Yeah, Outdoor Afro Portland could be that group, Corbin. I think there's a lot of options for what a group like that could be, but bringing in somebody who specifically has group representation there that might help us with our partnerships.
One thought that I have, and I know I tend to be the person always talking about sports on here, but since I joined, sports just aren't really talked about on this board, and it's actually been a little bit surprising to me. And I know that I have a very broad definition of parks, so I'm comfortable with all of the ways that we've talked about it. I also really love the idea of evolving the definition of parks. I feel like there needs to be more sports representation here. When you see what's in the bonds, to be honest, the sports leagues often get thought of as like elite track only, and there's a ton of access issues in sports, that there are organizations that are working on them. And we really need those voices here, because sports, whether we are big fans of them or not, team sports do have really great outcomes. I had a great conversation with around field level of service yesterday outside of the board meeting, and I got educated around how those conversations have been done. So I'd like to see another voice around sports, definitely around equity and access, not so much the sports voices that we hear from maybe too often. But that would be an avenue that I'd like to see there be a little bit more voice on, just because we've had very, very few conversations about sports here, and it's and I'm the one that needs to do that because that's where I'm coming from. But I think that's been a little bit of a surprise to me as a board member.
Thank you, Nova. I'm wondering, Sabrina, if you have thoughts on that. I do remember I think it was either the first or second year I was on the board, we did have a fun opening out at Park Lane, which I know is in the Rosewood, near the Rosewood, in which we had one of the Blazers and Blaze come. If you have thoughts on that topic, because I agree, Nova, I think there's so many things that we don't address sufficiently.
Well, like I said in the chat, I think that's a great point in recreation as a whole. I can put some thought into it. No one's coming to mind like immediately, but I'll definitely think about it.
Thank you. Let's see, Alejandro mentioned somebody with climate change experience. So somebody with some climate change resiliency experience and ecosystem services. I totally agree. And I know that might also overlap with Allie's interest in wildlife. Do you want to talk about that a little bit and think about, maybe who are some of the organizations that we might partner with, that we might try and tap into?
I can't really think of any specific right now off the top of my head. I'm sure I can get back to you with some of that, but I think in terms of both kind of like thinking about the future of the park system, but also about what's the messaging and the storytelling of the work that the department is doing, I think this is critical. And also on a more practical level, I think it would help us or help parks opening the door for potential additional sources of revenue and funding.
Yeah, Allie, do you have any thoughts? Like I said, that seems to overlap a bit with your interest in wildlife. I know that you have a particular interest there. Any
I do.
thoughts?
I'll give some thought to people because I think that there could be a really great cross section there. Also say just a thought on representation from the houselessness community. It's always interesting, right, when it's an unpaid thing that you're asking people to do, especially depending on which community they're coming from. So just being cognizant of what we're asking and who we're asking.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's something we do struggle with because, as Jessica and Randy touched on their presentation, one of the things that they do for their participation in their committees is provide a stipend or honorarium. And we don't do that. For evening meetings, I know there's, for evening budget advisory committee meetings, there is at least dinner provided. And I know upon request, when we met in person, they used to provide Smart Park vouchers, and probably would do bus tickets as well if we asked. But I don't know that we can offer any actual compensation. So it's something that is a consideration and a concern. But it might be something that we can, just have a discussion with the director and with the commissioner and just see what else might be possible to help remove those barriers. Corbin, I see your hand is up.
Thank you. I think one of the things that we might want to start with is finding out who we actually have on the board, because as a new board member, I don't necessarily have an understanding of the expertise of those who came before me. I think there might be an advantage of those who went through the vetting process to bring on new board members that have maybe a better understanding of what we're bringing to the table. So I think having that first initial conversation about who's here, because I'm hearing about biodiversity and ecosystem services and climate change, and guess who works in that. I do, along with, and I would love company, but who else do we have here that we really don't know who their superpowers are, their interests around park issues. So I think we need to start fleshing that out amongst ourselves, and then bring in those folks that we want to collaborate with. We're not starting from scratch.
Thanks, Corbin. Yeah, I think that's a great point. I did mention just quickly, the board matrix tries to capture, the sort of start of that, at least in a very kind of surface clinical kind of way. I do know also that we do have a board bio book. It's not a physical book, but it's just the bios that we provided to Brooke when we first joined the board. And the idea was this would be made available to the senior management team, but also to each other, so that we do understand, like you said, so that we have a better understanding of the skills that are here, so that we can understand where we can best take advantage of people. Because you're right, we can't know where the holes are or what the holes are until we know where our strengths are and what our individual skill sets are. So like I said, the matrix tries to do that a little bit. The board bios gets a little bit deeper. But yeah, that's something that we want to do a better job of. And we'd love to have your involvement there. Anybody else? Patty, we'd love to hear from your wisdom. You've gone through this process several times. I know you've been on several nominating committees and officer leadership committees.
I'm not sure I've got any gems of wisdom to offer, but I think the point is that to understand what skills are lacking in the group that we have at the moment, and certainly a great place to begin. And I don't doubt that Eleanor will have gone through this, is to look through those bios and find out what the gaps are. But that does seem like a good way to begin.
And David, you've been quiet. I didn't call you out earlier, maybe not in name, but.
I'll have to keep fishing in my circles as well.
With Patty leaving, do we have anyone who, Patty, I'm right, you're an architect, correct? Do we have anyone, and we have so many buildings, right? How many buildings does Parks own? Do we have anyone to fill that gap?
Well, amazing you should ask that, because we were delighted that David is not only an architect, but David is also at Patty's firm, and has been filling in for Patty when Patty has been traveling for the Land Use Infrastructure Committee, providing those reports. So we saw that as being a natural handoff there. So we're delighted to have that, a little bit of overlap between Patty and David to offer that. And then, of course, anybody else in the Land Use Infrastructure Working Group can ably assist, but that was kind of our thinking. So in terms of the major skill set, like I said, we can't actually replace Patty, but we do feel like that particular technical skill we have kind of covered in David, although, you know, others with similar expertise are more than welcome.
You know, there is one other expertise that I think is important, and that's landscape architecture. We've got Paul, but to have someone to overlap with him, because he's still got a couple of years to run, would be a very good thing to do. And that seems very relevant.
Yeah, so Paul has one more year. So Paul will have one more year after the close of this year. So he will roll off in the summer of 2023. And yes, I believe he's the only registered landscape architect on the board presently. And so that is true. That will be a skill set that we no longer have once Paul is termed out. So that might be something that we want to look for, so that, again, we have the overlap as we did this time with Patty and David.
Just to call out some of the good ideas in the chat, Vicente says more tribal nation representation would be of value, and Kenya youth and youth of color, and the immigrant and refugee communities.
Yep, agree with all of those. All good points.
And Sabrina, to your question, yes, Sarah is taking meeting minutes, and the meeting is recorded, and we have to save the chat.
Yes, so we'll have a good record of the ideas that are being tossed out now. Casey, your hand is up.
Kind of going a different direction, since if we really are going to focus on financial sustainability on a going forward basis, probably behooves us to get someone who is well acquainted in accounting as well as municipal finance. That's, as I say, a different professional direction.
Yep, agree with that as well. That was a specific need that we had a few years ago, and I'm delighted that was when we recruited Mike and Aaron to the board. But you know, obviously, additional expertise in that area is absolutely welcome, because again, and they're in the same cohort, so they will be rolling off together. So if we can have some overlap with them, at this point, we still have, I think they still have each 3 years, I think. So I think we're still okay for a while, but as much as we could have some overlap is definitely would be valuable. And yes, with the deferred maintenance issue and the other many challenges that Claudio's group contends with and Sarah's group contends with, that skill set would be valuable. Alana.
Just flagging, and I'm less worried about this with board members who are appointed by the council, but for our ex officio members, especially if we're looking at somebody from a youth community, often folks come on and feel like they are there to represent a specific voice or a specific organization that they come from. And I want to make sure that we're intentional, again, especially with the youth member or somebody who's new to board service, in telling folks that we bring on that we want them to bring their whole experience. I just feel like that's important to say and to be cognizant of as we recruit people.
Thank you, Ilana. I totally agree. And that's one of the things that we also want to do a better job of in the context of our onboarding process, so that folks do recognize that, you know, that we do want their whole selves, right? It's about their lived experience. You know, yes, I mean, in terms of Patty is so much more than just an architect. You know, Aaron and Mike are so much more than just, you know, financial and accounting people. You know, who knows what I do. But, you know, it's about our lived experiences, and we do need to do a better job of not only sharing stories that reinforce that, but giving people the space to feel like they can do that. So thank you. Okay. Any other comments on this issue? Oh, Corbin.
Thank you. And thank you for sending me out the board composition matrix. And it looks like the new board members their information is blank. So we might need to fill in our portion of that so we can have a better understanding of our interests and who we are of this board.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think that maybe that had gone out and was never populated. So if the new board members or returning board members as well, check over, what you said before. I mean, because issues change and things change, right? In terms of how you define your interests or your areas of expertise, or, GASP, even your age category potentially. So, update your matrix, get it back to, who's collecting those right now? Casey, Saren, Aaron?
Yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and send out the matrix to everybody. Although the one caveat I would have is that we're probably going to change it, but it might be a good idea to get updated as it's written now. So I'll go ahead and send it out to everybody. And if you can just send me what you think categories you fall into, that would be great.
Yeah, and who owns the board bios right now? Saren, do you have access to that? I know Brooke had sent it out before.
I do have access. I don't know who necessarily compiled them before, but I certainly have access, and I'm happy to, help and keep tabs.
Let's go ahead and Casey, if you can be in charge of, in Aaron's absence, maybe we can get that out to folks as well so that people can have a sense of where people are coming from. That would be terrific. Kenya, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I know there's been some questions about compensation for participating on boards, and different bureaus are doing different things, just as far as their advisory bodies and the way they're made up, and also their meeting structures and frequency of meetings. So I want to propose that I do a little digging just to see what the current practice is and see if anything's changed from the last information that I received as far as how we're addressing the paid compensation. We are attempting a pilot with it with some of our Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland work, but some other bureaus, they have just a longer tenure of that as a practice. So I just want to do a check-in with the Office of Community and Civic Life and their advisory bodies coordinator, just to see what the current update is on that, so I can give a report back on compensation for participation.
Thank you, Kenya. I really appreciate that, because like I said, it's an issue that comes up frequently because, I think our current membership, understand that it's a volunteer position. And of course, we want to contribute in what way we can, but we also recognize that, it's a barrier to folks for whom, giving this amount of time on a regular basis, doesn't work for their budget because they have other obligations or because of their, for whatever reason. So I think that it would be really valuable if we do understand what the range of possibility is, if there is a protocol in place right now for other bureaus, what that is, and where we might be able to participate in some kind of remuneration.
Yeah, I think there are also some tax implications also, as far as how much you're getting paid and once you cross over that $600 mark. There's a tax implication there, and there's also some bureaus, and like I said, I will find consistency just in city policy because some people are incentivizing participation through gift cards, and some people are saying do not use gift cards because we're not tracking them, or we're not tracking the payment, and it's still considered cash. So I'll look at all of those things, and also I'll just put this note out there. Childcare and, you know, food and, you know, all of those things are kind of coming into that mix too, you know, whether it's city staff versus, you know, community members. So it's all in the same bucket. So I'll get some clarity on all of that.
That's terrific. Thank you, Kenya. I'm glad that we had that discussion. I do think that it's going to feed into, you know, how we ensure that the board is accessible to all members of the community. So I think that that's really important. And like I said, we are actively recruiting members from this body to join the nominating committee to actually conduct the search and screening and interview process for new board members for this for next year. So please let Casey, Aaron, or me know if that's something that you would like to participate in. I think that'll be an important committee. Oh, Corbin.
Yeah, just really quickly, clarification. So the new board people will be coming in this year or next year? Just
so the schedule is that they would come on typically we have a July to June fiscal year. So the idea is that they would be voted in June and their term would take effect in July.
Okay, the reason why I'm asking that is that if we are going to change, and this has been under discussion about when we're going to be meeting, that can actually dictate who's going to even apply.
Mm-hmm.
So if 9 o'clock is not working for somebody, but a later time will. So how are you thinking through us getting some of our procedural situations rearranged, or however we're going to organize it before sending out these opportunities to join?
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge there is that, as you know, you're a member of the Community Engagement Working Group, and that group is trying to come up with a plan that addresses that meeting time question. The way we have done it in the past, and I will tell you, we met at a different time when I joined the board. So we used to meet at a what seemed like a bizarre time to me. It was I think 3 to 5. So at the end of the day, but like really, really a tough time for like parents with young children. And so I was like, that seems really strange. But there was also kind of during the interview process, I remember going, that's a really weird time. And they said, yes, but you know, we revisit the meeting time frequently. So if it's a time that's challenging for you, just let us know. And if it's challenging for enough people, we'll change it. And that's kind of how we've dealt with it on kind of an ad hoc basis. Because I don't know, like I said, I don't want to rush the Community Engagement Working Group in the context of shifting the official meeting time. But you're right, it is an important factor that's going to play into people's decision about whether or not this is a commitment that they're able to make or not. I don't know if I said that was it was fairly unsatisfactory answer, I recognize. But it's the best I can do right now. Anything else? Okay. Well, with that, if there are any agenda items folks wish to request for the March meeting, please speak up or send them to me or Casey. And if there's nothing else, I will call this meeting to a close. Thanks, folks.